2, 3. Okay, get out your $5 bills, pass them forward. You'll be I forgot we don't do that. We let you in for free. We just have a couple of simple rules. Our regulars love it. That once they get used to it, they love our rules. They are simple. There's no eating or drinking in the theater. David Packard contributed $160 million to the government to pay for this wonderful facility. We want to keep it looking new. And we ask that you don't smoke. And if you have a cell phone with you, please turn them off. If we catch you using the cell phone, we will confiscate it to sell on eBay. We need the money. If anybody was here last night, you might remember that we forgot to announce that there was no talking, and during the movie there was a lot of people talking, which kind of ruined the movie for people who were sitting next to them that were not wanting to be part of the conversation. So I'll tell you, there is no talking during the movie. Our regulars love it that if you want to talk, you have to go downtown and buy a ticket and pay for expensive popcorn, and then you can talk all you want. But here we ask you don't talk during the movie. You can laugh, you can clap, have a good time, but please no talking during the film. A couple of people asked questions when they came in today about how our reservation system is going to work. Tonight was the last night we took reservations. Starting next month, we're going to try a new system where it's basically you just show up. You come to see the movie, you don't need a reservation. However, if you're coming from out of town or it's going to be a really popular movie, let's say we play something like It's a Wonderful Life or Gone with the Wind and you think it's going to sell out, you can get tickets for free in advance. You can pick them up at the State Theater. I know, I got the very first tickets, and they were free. I walked in, I told them I wanted to see a movie at the Library of Congress, and I heard that they had free tickets, and I wanted to get something that was on the National Film Registry, so my wife and I are coming to see Airplane on Sunday, October 5th. Yes, the famous first tickets were for Airplane. If you live far out of town, a gentleman was talking tonight, he's from Warrenton. He didn't want to commit driving down here to only find out no seats were available. This is an option. You can go on the internet and purchase tickets to come to the free theater here, but they charge you $1.50 per ticket to purchase them in advance. You can either pick them up at the State Theater or will call, pick it up here at the theater. I know it's going to be kind of confusing as we all go through this, but believe me, we'll make it. If you're a regular, you know the routine. Just show up. You won't have to make a phone call. The movies are still free. And if you don't want to see the government shut down, please write your congressman and tell them you love the free movies at the Packard campus. And now for the introduction. A couple of months ago, my wife and I were driving to and from work here, and we were trying to come up with themes. What kind of upcoming themes could we schedule some films? And one of the themes we came up with was back to school. The reason we came up with the whole theme that's been played out this month was so we could play Goodbye, Mr. Chips, this one movie. Goodbye, Mr. Chips was written by James Hilton, whose 12th book was Lost Horizons, published back in 1933. Like his other 11 works, it was not a hit when it first came out. He was not a well-known writer. But all that was about to change. For his next novel, his subject was much closer to home. You see, James was the son of John Hilton, the headmaster at a London elementary school. The setting for Goodbye, Mr. Chips is based on Lee School, Cambridge, a middle or junior high school where young James was a pupil from 1915 to 1918. Hilton said that his inspiration for Mr. Chips came from both his father and William H. Balgarnie. This man not only taught there for over 50 years, he was also the editor of the school paper in which Hilton's first short stories and essays were published. Hilton wrote, "When I read so many other stories about public school life, I am struck by the fact that I suffered no such purgatory as the other authors apparently did, and much of this miracle was due to Balgarnie. Furthermore, his mutton chop facial hair earned him the nickname of Chops, the inspiration for Mr. Chips." After the huge success of this book, James Hilton became a best-selling author. Lost Horizon was then rediscovered and became a blockbuster. And so Hilton did what everybody did when you're a famous writer. He moved to Hollywood. He went on to write screenplays for Alfred Hitchcock's Foreign Correspondent and Mrs. Miniver for Greer Garson and Random Harvest for Ronald Colman and Garson, as well as many other great books. Robert Donat had appeared in American films, but only sporadically, following his international success in Alfred Hitchcock's 1934 feature film, The 39 Steps. But ill health had cost him the lead in Captain Blood in 1935, where he was replaced by a then unknown Errol Flynn, who also replaced him later in The Adventures of Robin Hood. With Goodbye Mr. Chips, which allowed him to age from 25 to 83, Donat had the part for which he would always be remembered. Sadly, illness allowed him only to make 20 moving pictures. To play Chip's wife, Kathy, MGM needed an actress with just the right combination of gentility and high spirits. Miss Garson's Catherine, the assertive young woman who changed the dour Mr. Chipping into the lovable and funny Mr. Chips, is altogether believable and quite entrancing. Mr. Hilton deserves no credit for her at all. He simply said that she was captivating and lively, and that and she soon had Chips, the boys, and the masters worshiping at her feet. So you see, authors have a bad habit of inventing people like that, merely saying that they are so-and-so and not bothering to prove it. But it's Miss Garson who manages to fit the bill. Her Catherine is one of the nicest people we would hope to meet anywhere. She only had to wait 2 years for the role to come along and travel 12,000 miles, but that's another story. The film would establish her as MGM's top female star and win her first of 7 Oscar nominations. She would win 1942 for another British story, Mrs. Miniver. And here's an interesting piece of trivia I found out I did not know about Greer Garson. She was Oscar nominated 5 years in a row, a record that she only shares with somebody named Bette Davis. Paul von Henried is splendid as the German instructor. You might know him as Paul Henried from Casablanca. Well, in his first English language film, like Greer Garson, this was his first film, he's credited as Paul von Henried because he was Austrian. He also was the lead in Now Voyager. And I want you to keep an eye out for a child actor, Terry Kilburn, who plays Collie and 3 of his descendants. Seeing that his reoccurring and youthful face is the linchpin that as time goes on, some things never change. You may notice the unusual opening credits that start with Robert Donat. He was so good in the film that they decided to give him the honor. Even before the title of the film, he gets the whole card just to himself. Later on, there's a credit to Sidney Franklin, who actually worked with Thalberg on developing the film, but he was promoted and became a producer. Then you'll see an unusual credit to Irving Thalberg, whose inspiration illuminates the picture of Goodbye Mr. Chips. And it's signed on screen, signed by the author of the book, the producer, the director, and all 3 screenwriters. The picture appeared on the Film Dailies and the National Board of Review's top 10 list for 1939 and received the Best Picture distinction from the Hollywood Reporter. Robert Donat won the Academy Award for Best Actor in 1939, his only Oscar win. Becoming one of the few non-Gone with the Wind victors, he defeated some of the most famous nominated performances in film history. Clark Gable's performance as Rhett Butler, Jimmy Stewart as Jefferson Smith in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, a little actor by the name of Laurence Olivier as Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights. He beat them all, and you'll be able to see why on the big screen. Now, this film has been remade many times, including in 1959. I don't know if anybody's seen it, the Brazilian TV version in Portuguese. Adios, Mr. Chips. In 1969, there was a musical remake, Goodbye Mr. Chips, starring Peter O'Toole and Petula Clark, and a Masterpiece Theater version for BBC TV in 1984, and again recently in 2002. There is a line in the film that is said in Latin, and I figure not all of us are Latin scholars, so I looked it up for you. When Mr. Chips says, "Remember me sometimes, I shall remember you," Hec olim mimenisse juvabit. The phrase translates to, and this reminds me of the film, in the future it will be pleasing to remember these things. I knew a Mr. Chips-like teacher. My coworker and good friend George Williman's father, Russ, was an art teacher in the small town of Springfield, Ohio. How well loved he was, I found out when I attended his funeral viewing, only to stand in line for hours as over 1,200 people were ahead of me paying respects to the family. As the New York Times said of this film in their review, it is a serene, heartwarming, and generally satisfactory film edition of an edifyingly sentimental novel. Like the story, the film is nostalgic. If we never knew of Mr. Chips, maybe we should have known him. He belongs in everyone's past. Well, that was going to be the end of my intro. Until this afternoon, I called Terry Kilburn, who plays Collie in the film. He's 86 years old, he's retired, he lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota. My wife tracked him down. I called him and asked him if he had any stories he wanted me to tell you tonight. He's the guy, the little boy that you saw on the slideshow that plays 5 different characters. He's this guy you can see right next to Mr. Chips. I'll have the picture in the lobby for afterwards. He told me he loved it. He had made The Christmas Carol in 1938, where he played Tiny Tim with Reginald Owens, Scrooge. And then he made this. So I asked him about what Robert DeNott was like, and he said he was extraordinarily sensitive. His performance was touching everybody on the set. And there was something kind of unusual. When they're making a movie, it takes a long time between the actual shots, the times the camera is photographing. They have to set up the lights and the stage and all that. Well, Robert DeNott stayed in makeup and in character. And one day, young Terry brought some friends to meet him on the set. And he was dressed up as the 80-year-old character, Mr. Chips. Well, he stayed in character. So they got introduced to this 80-year-old man and didn't understand that it was the same actor, Robert DeNott, who was only 34. Let's see, he said that he got the role because director Sam Wood, who discovered him, put him in his very first film, Lord Jeff, a film he made with Freddie Bartholomew and Mickey Rooney. Let's see, he said that Garson was very ladylike, and he later appeared in another film she was in called Random Harvest. An interesting story he told us my wife wanted me to share was that later in life, like a lot of child actors, he became a director himself. And he, of all things, ended up directing a play starring Robert DeNott's widow. So there was kind of a symmetry. He was a child in this film, and later on he's directing The Widow. He said when people are watching for him in this film, look for his hair and look to change. He pops up right in the beginning. He's actually at the very end of the film, and he's in 5 or 6 different places through the movie. And sometimes he'll have curls, sometimes straight hair. He'll always have those sweet, buggy eyes. And I hope you enjoy the film. Also in the lobby after the movie, you can see a letter that Greer Garson sent me explaining why she did not like to sign autographs. It's an all handwritten letter explaining why she did not like to sign autographs. And then all the autographs that she changed her mind and decided to send me anyways. I'm glad you all came. I hope we're open next week. Thanks for coming. I hope you enjoyed the film.